Struggling to find your voice and make your mark as a woman in a leadership role? In this episode, I interviewed tech executive Samiksha Khanna to unveil the strategies for women to thrive in leadership roles. From cultivating meaningful connections to prioritizing impactful goals over a mere hustle, this conversation is packed with insights that could help transform your leadership journey. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of The Leader Within. Today, I'm excited to introduce Samiksha Khanna. Samiksha has a background in finance and operations, working in tech companies for over the last 25 years. She's one of the founding members of The Big Push and Fuel the Vision, and she's also currently the COO at Nest Wealth. She has worked internationally, focused on designing and implementing business operations, developing policies that promote company culture and vision, and establishing go-to-market plans. With Samiksha's extensive leadership experience, I'm excited to have her share her insights with you. Well, welcome, Samiksha. Can you tell us a little bit about how you discovered your passion or your niche?
Oh, thank you so much, Angela, for having me. It's so great to see you again. And yes, how I discovered my passion and my niche. It's funny though, I wouldn't, from a personal perspective, it sounds so funny to say a passion and niche, but it really is represented in what I do. And it is something I get very excited about. And the biggest thing really is just collaboration and bringing people together. And somebody else mentioned it to me because to me it was such an easy thing, like just talking to people. When I started off my career very early as in the hospitality industry, and then when I had my first corporate job, I was in accounts payable. And what I would do is just back in the day, long time ago, I didn't email everybody the invoices. I would walk from department to department and drop off the invoices. And as I was dropping off the invoices, I would just chat with people and I would just ask them questions about, what are you working on? Or I saw this invoice come through. What's this about? And I just went out of my way to understand how the business worked. And then over time, you get a good sense of, oh, it's this time of season, or they're going to be busy working on this. And also you will go to other departments and be like, hey, I was talking to so-and-so in this department. They have this going on. And they were also interested in knowing like, oh, I was wondering what was going on down the hall. So it was just a natural way of having conversations with people and asking them what was going on. And people do love to talk about their work and what they're accomplishing. And over time, and it took me a few years for someone to point that out to me because I just said, well, I'm just talking to people and getting to know the business. And they said, but the fact that you can do it and that it's not forced and people actually want to talk to you about it is a really great skill of yours. And it's funny though, you just kind of brush off things that you think are so easy and basic. With other people, they really struggle with it.
I love that curiosity, and I totally hear you about when things come effortlessly. You're just like, oh, but it's just like, I just do it, right? And it's such an important skill, though, especially at your level. And so, from a leadership perspective, like, what are some of the attributes of leaders that have positively impacted your success? Or maybe they had attributes where, like, I would never want to adopt those traits when I hold a leadership position, kind of thing.
Yeah. You know what? The mood I'm in today, I'm going to focus on the all good stuff. I'm just going to focus on good leaders and give examples of good leaders because I love talking about good leaders. Probably, it doesn't flows with the level I'm at in my career, right? Like where I am now, I'm at a senior level. And what I just want from a good leadership is partnership, transparency. It's in this together. I know that you're maybe the founder and the CEO, but I want you to feel like we're on this together. You're not a person alone on an island. So for me, at this point in leadership, it's just important that I have their trust and they know that they can trust me and they can rely on me and hold me accountable. Early on in my career was probably getting women to be comfortable to speak up, giving them confidence, not letting them underestimate themselves. And I had those really great leaders. And I had them from women, I had them from men. I was very fortunate that I had more positive leaders and ones that weren't very effective. But the biggest thing that they did for me is they took my curiosity and they were able to give me work and give me goals that made me feel like I can accomplish anything, or made me feel like, you know what, if you make a mistake, if you screw up, you are able to get over it and you have the support of people working with you to like fix it. Like you're not by yourself working on this alone. You're able to collaborate. And because I had a good relationship with the people I worked with, and I always believe this, like having a good relationship with your leader is important, but having a good relationship with your support network, the people that you work with and your counterparts in every department, the people that you interact with most of the time is equally important. And they're the ones who are going to support you. If you take on something big and you're like, I'm feeling a bit underwater, I'm overwhelmed, they're the ones who come in and help you. And I realized that very early on in my career, that the way that I'm going to be able to achieve something is by having a strong support team who wants to see me succeed. And I want to see them succeed as well.
And when you talk about support teams, one question that just came to mind, and especially creating that environment where people feel safe to one, fail forward, learn from them, and then actually bring it to your attention so that like nothing's coming out from left field, right? When you have to kind of answer to whoever is above or lateral to you. And so my question to you is, how come some leaders, when they do have mistakes come to them, really struggle with dealing with that ego where it's like, hey, like I'm worried how it's gonna impact the impression it has on me, even though like that mistake is not gonna like directly reflect on you because it's someone else
Yeah.
who made it, but it's kind of how you handle it going forward without just putting the hammer down and making someone feel like garbage, essentially, right? So when you're developing your leaders and you notice that, hey, like maybe you can kind of handle that mistake differently with your employee, what would you say is one tip that you've offered them that has actually helped develop?
Accountability. It's huge. It's first of all, it's being comfortable saying I screwed up on this or I didn't do this. And also just walking them through like let's go back and let's, I hate to say the word unpackage it, but let's unpackage it. Let's go back and see at what point. And I do believe for me as a leader, when I am giving a responsibility or project to somebody and I know it's kind of like, I think you can do this, I know you can do this, it's not good enough to just say, you're going to be amazing at this, walk away and you're like, okay, I'll see you in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, let me know how it's going. For me, if I know I'm doing that to somebody, I need to have check-ins with them on a regular basis. And again, depending on the individual, so at least a minimum of once a week. If not, I've gone as far as having like daily check-ins on like how, like, wait, it's the crucial points of a project. How is it going? How are you progressing along? What's the project plan? So they know that they're supported the whole time. So maybe we find out together that something didn't happen the way you wanted it to. Maybe they're like, okay, you asked me this question, I don't know the answer, I'm going to go and get back to you. So I think as a leader, it's upon you to not just say, go do this and then act ignorant and have them come back to you when things aren't working and you act all like, well, how come you didn't tell me? Because to some extent, folks don't know what they don't know, and it's on you to help support them through this new phase of their career. And if you have somebody who you're reporting to who's like, oh, this is going to look so bad on me, or this isn't going to represent well, like you got a culture issue in your company overall. Like either you have like, hopefully you just have one bad apple, or you have some pretty big culture issues where collectively in the culture, it's like you fail and you have this black mark against your name. That should not be how I believe any culture, especially when you're in the startup and the grow up phase. Like you're expected to make mistakes. Like you're learning things for the new time. This isn't like you've done this before many times and this is just a process that everybody knows. Like this is about exploration, and it is about finding out, okay, well, probably could have done that better, or wow, I didn't even know this would happen. If I did X, the Y would happen. Does that clarify it?
I appreciate that accountability piece, especially when you said, how do they know what they don't know, right? Because when someone's like, do you have a question? And in the moment, you're like, no, like genuinely no, right? And it's not until you kind of like mess up and you're like, oh crap, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I appreciate how you create that space for them to have that conversation. And you've developed extensive leadership experience in the startup space and recently in the scale up space. So what would you say is one of your biggest leadership epiphanies to date?
I've read a lot of things. I've heard a lot of things about sense of urgency. Everything's got to get done. Like, we're putting out fires and we're just going to get things done. And I understand and appreciate how we got here. But I would just really love for companies to focus on the urgency around accomplishment versus the urgency of just doing something. And we get caught up in, well, just do it. And, 6 months go by, 1 year goes by, and you have all these holes, half these things that are done just like half-ass or done so poorly because my job was to get it done quickly, not get it done efficiently, get it done so scalable. It's more like, it's an urgency, everything's on fire. Let's do this. And I really just want to change the focus on accomplishment, not on hustle, not on urgency. And that's the epiphany I've had. Like, try and build an environment where, yes, accomplish something and like work on something, but don't just say, oh, I did these 8 things. And your leader was like, great, awesome. You did 8 things. You did it in 1 day. Awesome. Now go do 8 other things tomorrow. And then time goes by. It's like, you've done a lot of things, but you haven't actually accomplished anything. And then this is collectively as an organization. When you think about that across the board, then you start having OKRs and you start measuring goals, and companies on a quarterly basis are like, whoa, we're not really hitting our goals or measuring well towards what we thought we were going to do. Maybe we need to scrap the OKR system and find some other way of measuring the business. Maybe we need to work on different goals. It's like, no, you just need to focus on getting the goals done. Like, you're rewarding the wrong activity. And that's something I've really just seen and noticed over time, over the last, I think, especially during COVID, but definitely over the last 12 to 16 months.
So that's a common thing that I've heard a lot of leaders say. And it's funny because it's like nothing is ever taken away as a priority or as an activity off of your plate. It's always added on.
Yeah,
So, especially I feel like in the startup world where you have to move fast, especially if you have an X amount of dollars you're working with funding wise, right? So,
exactly.
for you, how do you kind of put like the post in the sand where you're like, hey, like I'm not moving this post. I hear you. Like I can appreciate that urgency and everything, but I can't move this post any further unless if you want me to give you garbage results.
I think it starts at the very beginning when you're actually putting together, like for me, again, having a finance and operations background, some kind of fiscal plan, some kind of budget, some kind of goals you want to achieve. And even just doing that, and obviously you can do it a lot more frequently, like, so do it every quarter, but turn around and have a good sense, meet with the executive team, meet with your senior folks, meet with everybody if it's a small enough company and say, this is what we're going to accomplish in 3 months' time. This is our goal. This is what we want to get done. And then have those weekly cadence on this is how we're tracking towards those goals. This is what we're doing. And if you're not working towards these goals, but you're really, really busy doing stuff, let's have a conversation on what you're busy doing, because this should be what everyone's guided towards. I mean, and different departments have different goals. Like finance will have a different goal than sales, and honor that and respect it. But just make sure that everybody who has their particular goals is being tracked. What I would love to do is just get people comfortable with the word accountability. It's unfortunately due to really bad management, really bad leaders, people are scared of accountability, or they're all about like, well, I'm responsible for this, but this person didn't, like, sales and marketing, the back and forth. Well, I was responsible for selling, but I get that. I understand that. But accountability isn't a full-headed word. Accountability actually, if it's done in the proper environment, really empowers people, and it gets them that sense of accomplishment. Like, I've done something, I was accountable for this and I completed it, or I asked for help and I got it. And it should feel really great when you can come into a room and say, listen, we were able to do 8 of the 10 things. We were able to achieve it. I was able to work with people to do it. 2 things just didn't go the way we wanted it to. But again, it shouldn't be at the end of the quarter, come back to me and report what happened. It should be a regular cadence of, we know this is going to probably get a bit off course. And that again, to me, is a bit of accountability. It's not necessarily accomplishing it. It's just being able to let people know we're off course on this. This is not going to happen. Let's grab a group of people together and help course correct. And unfortunately, when a lot of people have the, in my view, incorrect definition of accountability, where they are responsible for fixing the problem themselves and not getting anybody else involved.
And what does it look like to create a more cohesive environment where you can involve the right stakeholders in those conversations? Because I think one thing that corporations do a lot is they'll have the overarching business strategy, and then it gets cascaded down to the next level of executives. The executives will then cascade it down, but then it's such a siloed approach that by the time, like you said, we're so deep in here, how do we go backwards to figure out who actually has to be involved? So from your lens as a COO, like what does it look like to kind of let's fix it up here kind of thing?
Yeah. Ideally, I would love to just get rid of all departmental, like the definition of departments, like sales, marketing, finance. And I would love to just move to more of a project-based approach, because everything is project-based. Like, I never worked in a company where, I mean, there's some very specific things that just finance does and just sales does and so on. But most of the time, in order for them to achieve anything, you need to work collaboratively. Organizations could look at, especially in the scale-up pieces, is not having departmental goals, but having project goals that go across the departments. So as an executive, if I'm in charge of finance, I don't come into the executive room and say, I'm in charge of the budgets because that's what my job is, and I gotta make sure we save money. And meanwhile, somebody in another department wants to spend money because there are things that are going wildly successful and they need more money to invest in it. And I'm like, nope, sorry, my job is to balance this budget. It's really about being project-based. It's turning around and saying, again, going back to the focus on accomplishments. It's about what are we trying to accomplish this quarter? And how do we get, what people do we need? What resources do we need? Get those folks to then work towards creating their goals on helping to support that particular accomplishment. So it's not departmental, it's across the board, and everyone's like, hey, I'm on project A. And you could be in the same department and you could be working side by side with somebody and you're on 2 different projects and you still have departmental goals and talk about them. But this way it gets people outside of those individual, I just focus on this, and go, no, I'm part of this other project that's part of 20 other people in the organization that are working towards it.
Well, I really appreciate that project perspective because I think it affords everyone, no matter what level you are at the organization, information to get a breadth of what's going on across the business and the larger implications, right? And how you can kind of step in and kind of collaborate from that perspective. So for you, what have you been noticing when it comes to empowering women in leadership? Because I know earlier you had said, hey, like, you know what, like, I definitely want to be able to help like women feel like we can speak up more and stuff like that. Is there a sizable difference in a startup versus a scale up in terms of empowering women in leadership as well?
I can't say definitively. I know with the women that I work with and the ones that I work either a part of my team or I collaborate with them, it's really just giving them the permission to ask for what they want and be comfortable just coming right out and saying it, be not apologizing for asking for what they want, and really just it kind of goes back to why I was really interested in this topic. It is bringing in and unleashing that potential in people, because I think as a leader, especially somebody who's a woman, especially somebody who understands what a lot of women go through, it's giving them the extra support and the confidence they need to turn around and say, Samiksha, this is what I want, or I'm worried about doing this, or I'm sorry that I'm asking for this, and retraining them. So it's not much of a difference. I think the only big difference I could say from a startup versus a scale up is in a startup world, you're probably given so many things at a time, you don't really have the chance to stop and think about, can I actually do this? It's like, I'm just going to take this on and do it. And next thing you know, you're like, oh my God, I just finished doing this. But if you say to somebody, listen, you just accomplished this, this, and this, they may be like, oh, that was just a one-off thing. It's like, no. Again, it's going back and giving them the confidence and showing them, listen, this is what you did and you didn't know anything about this. So once you start getting to the scale-up phase and you're giving them like, listen, I'm going to put you into customer success because you're amazing at this. You can talk to customers so well. You can manage QBRs, and they may come back and say, I've never done this before. I'm like, well, you didn't do the eight other things that you did, or like all these other things before, and you accomplished them well because you had a support system. So sometimes it's reminding people of you can accomplish a lot. And I've been tracking it as somebody who is vested in your success. And I want to remind you, when we talk about performance reviews, we talk about projects, why I think you'll be successful at this. And again, I think that's on me to make sure that I remind people, this is why I trust you. This is why I have confidence in you. And over time, I have seen that in some of the women that report to me. I used to have this one lady who asked me, she's okay if I work from home today? And I'm like, just tell me you're working from home. You're a professional woman. You don't need to ask my permission to go from home. I fully trust that you do it. I fully trust that you're going to get your stuff done. Just give me a heads up. And it's small things like that. Like, you don't need to ask my permission. Go do this. And when I start seeing those people evolving their career and taking on more, I love that. I love the idea that they can just come into a room and confidently present in front of the executive team, and just reminding myself, like, you know, a year ago or whatever time it was, that they were just so nervous about doing this, and then just seeing them be successful.
Appreciate that, because sometimes when you're doing stuff as like a frontline contributor or whatever it may be at the very bottom level of the ladder, when a leader simply says good job, you're just like, okay, and like what does that actually mean? I thought I was just doing my job. But when they're like very specific, like so many of you where it's like, hey, like, you know what, like, that's crazy that you just like tackled all 8 of those things, and it's not just that one-off thing. Look at what you accomplished. I think it gives them a sense of confidence to continue to step into rooms the way that they do.
It's also just being honest about someone's, like, right now we're going through an acquisition at Nest, and there's a lot of uncertainty, as there usually is during an acquisition. And it's talking to people and saying, they're like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going to happen to my role. I don't know who I need to. I'm like, this is normal. Like, own the fact that sometimes chaos, sometimes the gray area is normal. Just go through, focus on what you're really good at, focus on what you know you need to do. Like, we still have customers, we still have people we need to address. Focus on that, and then write it down. Let's see where the chips fall and how you like it. But it's okay to be like, and it's okay to be honest with them about, yeah, this part's awkward, or when you have to go through layoffs and you have to give bad news and you lose some of the people that you work with. It's acknowledge that, you know what, this is, I don't want it to always be like it's sunshine and roses, but I also want to be able to say, yeah, there are some ups and downs, and acknowledge them and let people to some extent vent about what they're scared of. And I can't always guarantee that everything they're scared of is going to be okay, but I can say, listen, like, I hear you, I understand what you're going through, and as far as for the things I can control, I'm going to keep you in the loop, so you don't have anxiety, so you don't spend time, you know, over the weekends worrying about things that aren't going to happen.
Having gone through a major restructuring myself recently, I can appreciate your willingness to be transparent, because you're right, it's not rainbows and sunshine. So for you as a leader, how have you gotten comfortable having those uncomfortable conversations? Because I know there are a lot of leaders out there who are conflict aversive and just would rather dodge the overall topic, and then everyone else is just like walking on eggshells shells and going through anxiety every day until like the hammer drops, right?
Yeah. Well, so what's happening recently, I've been talking about this for a while because there's no way companies can sustain, like we all saw it, right? Like, in the Great Resignation, we saw people who were getting jobs, they're getting paid like 50% more than what they were making. They just weren't qualified for the amount of money people were spending for jobs, roles. It was just not sustainable. So I was having conversations with employees at that point when people wanted, like, so-and-so just left the company, they got like a $20,000 raise. And I just remember saying, that's not sustainable. Like, we can try and do that, but we're going to have layoffs in a few months if we try and do that. Like, it's not sustainable. And I think it's always being, now some people have still left because they wanted the $20,000. And I get that. Like, some people stayed, and like, for the ones who stayed are the ones who are a little bit more like dubious about, this is not real. Like, this cannot be sustainable either. And hopefully they still have their role and they didn't leave and kind of get laid off afterwards. But I do, because I come from a numbers background, this is why it's so important for me to work at a company that's transparent about the goals, transparent about every week or every quarter, whatever the time period is, showing the company this is what we're working towards. And then if things are going towards the red, be like, listen, like, we're supposed to hit these sales goals. We're not hitting these sales goals. We need to come together and course correct. And so I don't think any employee, if you're doing that, I don't think any employee should be surprised by, listen, we didn't hit our targets. We didn't hit the goals. We're going to have to cost cut. We're going to have to do something, maybe, hopefully we don't do anything drastic, but we may have to do something drastic. And I just let the numbers speak for themselves. Like, one of my favorite sayings is like, facts don't have feelings. Like, these are the facts. Like, we're not hitting the targets. We're not hitting our MQLs. We're not, hitting our churn numbers. This isn't me telling you, trying to make you feel bad. These are facts. These are things that we've actually happening, and as a business, this is going to impact us down the road if we don't course correct. So when we do course correct, and if something like layoffs have to happen, I don't want employees to feel, oh my God, I didn't see it coming. They may not see it coming towards them, but they should be able to see, like, yeah, we saw it because we're just not hitting our targets. It's always tough, and people never want to, you never want to do that. But I do think as an organization, you need to keep your employees, because sometimes they come up with really great ideas too. Like, sometimes, like, they come up and say, listen, like, I saw that we weren't hitting my MQLs. Have we thought about this? Have we talked about this? Like, I have some ideas. And awesome. Let some people, besides just the executives, own the problem. Let everybody kind of go in there and help solve the problem.
I love that idea, especially when you're in an agile environment, because I think like Toyota did that, right? Where it's just like everyone come up with a solution X amount of time, right? Because it's like real-time practical solutions versus sometimes, like, yes, you have brilliant minds in the executive suite, but sometimes the strategy unfortunately doesn't translate. Keyword sometimes, I'm not trying to offend everyone out there,
No,
but sometimes it just doesn't translate directly to the bottom line that your people can see, right?
Yeah.
As we slowly wrap up our conversation, what's one thing that comes to mind for you as a leader when it comes to this? What's the first thing that comes to mind when it comes to unleashing the potential of individuals and organizations? Like, what does it take?
I think, first of all, it takes trust. It takes a lot. It's having conversations with people about what is it that you wanted to do when you were growing up, but what is the skill? Like, what was it? What did you do in high school? Were you really great at sports? Were you great at drama? Were you really great at public speaking? And finding a way to take the things that they're passionate about and bring it into the workforce. Like, even it may not be like, listen, it may not be 80% of what they do. It may just be a side hustle that they love to do in the organization. But asking people, like, if you're really great at drama, maybe we can put you up there at our quarterly reviews, and maybe you can be the one presenting some of the stats or some of the particular presentation slides, because again, they have that ability to act in front of people. Obviously, it's not a drama class, but still, like, it's unleashing things that people enjoy doing and finding a way to bring that into the day-to-day work, or finding a way to just have something completely random, like have like one of the companies that worked at, we had like a Fireside Friday, and we had like random skills or random talents that people had, and we had some guy who was like great at doing balloon animals, so like, great, do some balloon animals. We had another guy who made the world's best guacamole, and he actually walked us through how to make really great guacamole. And it's not about the guacamole, it's not about the balloon animals, it's just about having people feel like, listen, like, this is another side to me that I want people to see, and this is another side to me that I feel comfortable in this environment doing that. It may not be related to work whatsoever, but the guy that did the guacamole, he was amazing. Like, he just had this, like, he could have been on a Food Network show. He was just so good at it. So it brought it aside for all of us to be like, God, this guy is just like, really interesting to talk to. And obviously he was in a different part of the company. He worked in a different, he was remote. So now we saw people every once in a while, they talk to him about this, because they're like, I know some something I could talk to you about and get to know you better. And this person was awesome because they had a chance to kind of break the ice and feel more comfortable talking to folks. So I really just think it's above and beyond what's the skills you want to do at a job, because I think, again, people don't know what they don't know. But I focus on the leaders to bring out the skills that people enjoy and either like find a way to incorporate it into the business or just do something random and fun with it another way so people get to enjoy it.
I think that sounds so fun. But yeah, it's the way that you guys approach it is not only does it create like a inclusive culture where people can feel seen, like they can engage. And then like you said, there's that business implication where, especially if as a leader, you take the time to be like, hey, like, you know what, that skill actually can translate into something that's coming down the pipeline. Like, it's not like directly that technical skill, but it does translate, right? And I think that's awesome that you have that view. So my last question to you is, what's one thing that you're working on that you are excited about?
What I want to do now is pivot a little bit and really start looking towards more fractional based work. So, working full time is awesome. Being in the role I've been in has just been a great experience. But looking a bit more in the future and being like, how can I work more with CEOs on smaller startup companies and just working with them on some of the blockers that are stopping them from growing, stopping them from getting out there and like achieving what they need to achieve. So it still happens. Like you have the same problems at small startups where, you as a CEO, you as a founder, like she or he needs to get out there and talk to analysts. They need to do some marketing. They need to be on the road. They need to talk to customers, but they still have like people that they need to support and people they need to give guidance to. So it's finding a way to help work more fashionably with some of with some founders to kind of help them grow their business, but also give them this peace of mind that, hey, I don't mind helping you with the day-to-day pieces as you're growing until you get to a point where you can maybe hire for all the levels of management that you need to support the business going forward.
I can't wait to see what magic you'll create out of that, given all the experiences that you've been able to accumulate. So thank you so much for the time and just all the expertise and tips that you shared today. I really appreciate it. And to everyone else who's tuned into another episode, thank you so much for your time and attention. And I can't wait to stay connected with you on the next episode. Till then, stay safe.